Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us here on The Father Show. And I'm your host, Mike Thompson. Today, we got another fantastic show. But before we get into that, if you have not subscribed to The Father Show with Mike Thompson and checked out our YouTube channel, I ask that you go there now, check it out, hit that subscription button, and while you're there, hit the notification bell so that way every week when we have a show, you will be notified. And also for you men, if you are in need of resources, please go to the Father Show with MikeThompson.com and click on resources, and there you will find a list of resources to help you and people that you can contact that can provide you the service that you need. And our guest should be one of them, because we have a therapist by the name of Michael Uram, and he is the founder and the CEO of Uram Family Therapy, a private practice psychotherapy office dedicated to helping their clients live their authentic lives by treating anxiety, depression, ADHD, Asperger's, high functional autism, OCD, and related conditions using evidence-based techniques such as cognitive behavior therapy, collaborative problem solving, exposure response prevention, acceptance and commitment therapy, and then more. Now, Michael also has a book called Parenting and Asperger's, and it is a simple guide to understanding your child's unique traits and having an open mind on how to support and connect with your child. It was released in February 2021, and it is available in all the major book publishing companies. So, ladies and gentlemen, I really want to dive into this because I really have been wanting to do a show about autism, and Michael brought up the fact about Asperger's, and I know it's a rare disease, but I want him to tell it, not me. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's welcome Michael Uram. Why I keep saying putting a B in there?
Well, you got to forget it to remember it. So it's Uram.
And
Michael, what's your last name? Uram.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it. Uram. Okay. Yeah. And you have a Uram Family Therapy, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. We have 8 therapists, and we're in Southern California, and we do our best to help every single person feel more authentically themselves when they walk out the door.
Yeah, and it is.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
No, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And, you know, like I was telling you earlier, to have you on the show and to be able to talk about, you know, the autism and Asperger's and ADHD is something I've been wanting to do because it's a rare disease, but I want fathers and parents in general to be able to recognize it, to understand what their child may be going through and why and when they need to seek help so that they can get the child the help that they need so they can live their best authentic life. So let me start off with a question. What is Asperger's?
Sure. Well, Asperger's is a condition where essentially you have a lot of difficulty socially getting along well with others, understanding someone else's perspective, and being able to be flexible. So whether it's flexibility with your routine, flexibility cognitively thinking through something, Asperger's is exemplified usually by someone being really into something, a topic, an interest, something, and then really having difficulty having a conversation with someone else that's related to any other topic other than their own special interest. At least in popular media, that's usually what we see.
Okay, so if they are really thinking about cars, for instance, and you want to talk about music, they have a hard time to understand and connect with you on that, on those two, on a different subject level.
Absolutely. I mean, just even now, as you did a segue from one topic to the next,
Mm-hmm.
most individuals with Asperger's really struggle with that segue. That's an executive functioning skill of being able to show the other person you really respect who they are and what they're talking about, and then let them know that we're going to talk about something somewhat similar to what you're currently talking about. And I really want to be able to have you shift the topic slightly with me. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
verbal dance back and forth between two individuals. A lot of times, individuals with Asperger's would then just go right into that special interest, and that just abrupt shift is noticeable and pushes away a lot of other people that otherwise would be your friend.
Okay. And is this a rare disorder?
The numbers are really difficult to pin down for autism spectrum disorder.
Mm-hmm.
The number now is 1 in 54 children under 18, and a slightly higher ratio in adults, because it's also an adult condition as well. Kids grow up.
Hmm.
And with Asperger's, they stopped measuring it in 2013. So the diagnosis was removed. But a lot of individuals identify more with the label of Asperger's. So they're able to keep that label, that identity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really measured for the last 10 years or so, whether you really have Asperger's or not. It seems more of an Asperger's profile. And there's an association called AANE. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty much like the biggest Asperger's association in the US. And they call it an Asperger's profile now rather than a diagnosis.
So they call it a profile. Okay. And is this similar to autism?
It is still categorized under autism if it is
Okay.
a disorder. But a lot of individuals with Asperger's wouldn't meet criteria for an autism spectrum disorder. So they're like in this middle ground of, I know that the way I interact with others is different than probably what a neurotypical person should go through. I'm
Mm-hmm.
neurodiverse, but I don't exactly meet criteria for an autism spectrum disorder.
Hmm.
But it is under the umbrella of autism, at least in
Okay.
our, diagnosis code called the DSM.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It, so the parent, is there any other symptoms that a parent would look out for to notice that their child might be has an Asperger's disorder?
Yeah, one related thing that isn't exactly Asperger's, but usually is a red flag for a lot of parents is sensory issues. Having difficulty wearing certain types of clothing,
Hmm.
having an unusual gait when you walk, or just different ways of, this is too bright, I won't eat this food. All of those different sensory issues seem to be highly correlated with having Asperger's or autism. And that for me is something that is much more readily noticeable than if your kid struggles a little bit to make friends at a developmental level.
Mm-hmm.
So just, going into a group of three other kids and having a play date and being able to follow along with someone else's lead. Sometimes kids with Asperger's do that really well, but then other times they don't.
Mm-hmm.
So having that gray area, that just nuanced detection is a little harder to figure out than the sensory issues.
And does autism kids have a rougher time in making, having friends and changing their routine in a sense?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of kids with autism really struggle with valuing the input of others, where they really want to connect, they want to have a friend.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever you need that reciprocation, where you would then show that friend that you're really interested in their life and what they're talking about and them being in control or them choosing the game, it's really hard to have that flexibility to allow someone else to lead and then to be able to follow them. It's that dynamic right there of reciprocal interaction that is incredibly difficult and usually leads to a meltdown,
Mm-hmm.
which is different from a tantrum, but it leads to a meltdown of just being overwhelmed, like the world's not working the way I want it to.
And I've heard, and I'm be honest, I've never been around an autistic child, but it's always, as a parent, it's always something that I really praise other parents that have to go through, because I know it's got to be difficult. It's difficult to raise a child, just a so-called normal child in itself, but the child to have autism or Asperger's is hard. But Well, and we'll get to ADHD here in a minute, but what are some special skills that a parent can have to be able to help their child through with Asperger's or autism?
Well, I'll make this really specific to fathers because there's a lot of support groups that moms are really active in.
Okay.
I reached out to a few other national groups. They don't have father groups of having a child with autism.
Hmm.
Talking Now, all the major groups are all
Mm-hmm.
about moms. It's rare for a father to be there, and it's incredibly rare for a father to have a support group or just other, dads to then go to and say, my child's not really responding the way I want them to. We have, I mean, at least in Southern California here, it's something called Challenger League.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like my kid can't play sports, but now they have a way of adapting and then being able to play sports. And there's not outside of that group other dads just go to and say, my child's really struggling with being able to connect with me. I want to have that dad experience. I want to have that father experience where my kid gives me a hug after I give him good advice. My
Mm-hmm.
kid's not interested in me and he's looking at a device or he's, playing with this other thing that has, little to do with anything I'd like to influence or really have an effect on his life.
So it's
And they
like
feel
a
really lost. They feel really neglected.
yeah. So it's like a total disconnect with the father.
Mhm.
But do they connect with the mother, or they give them the
Sort
same?
of.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it's not an absolute where like they really struggle and just don't connect with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Most individuals with Asperger's really do have that sense of it's called cognitive empathy. So they'll tell you they love you, they really care about you, and really want you to be a part of their lives, to their parents, to their friends, dad, everything. But it's that affective empathy, feeling it, and then going in for the hug or understanding the nuances of love
Mm-hmm.
are really difficult to be able to express. So they do get the words, but you don't often get the actions. Or a hug is too much pressure or too little. There's so many other nuanced ways of really just missing out on the complexities of what a connection between father and child would be.
Hmm.
But moms really do go for that hug or go for something else, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But they're usually more active in the solving the issue, which is, I mean, an area of conflict with some other adult groups of autism. I say it's not something to solve. You want to be able to just connect with your child, and they're neurodiverse. They're different, not worse.
So let me ask you now. You said solve. The mother will solve or won't try to solve. Just work with the child.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? Do you think that is a man's issue with masculinity because we tend to try to solve all the issues? Do you think that's the reason why a child has less connection with the father than it would the mother?
Absolutely. Because whenever you say like, guys, we like to solve problems, and this is something that we can't really solve and really just take a logical step from here to here to be able to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's confusing, it's overwhelming. So many fathers that come to me just feel really hopeless and feel like there's nothing that they can do. And when I recommend making accommodations and allowing this to be the new normal,
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard to be able to adapt to this relationship as being what their experience of fatherhood is going to be like. They want some way of saying, I want, father and son connecting and going to do this activity and being just as into it as the other person and sharing that experience. And that's not usually the case.
Yeah. So would you, as a parent of an Asperger's or autism child, you really have to parent with an open mind, which is something we should be doing anyway, but you really have to parent with an open mind.
You have to parent with an open mind and an open heart and the ability to then creatively solve your own self-regulation. Because they talk about self-regulation, or we talk about, our therapist, we talk about self-regulation more than anything else,
Mm-hmm.
is if you're able to know that your range of emotions is within a healthy range, virtually anyone can come to you and really understand that you're having a rough time. But if, as a father, you're yelling and you're dysregulated and you're trying to control your kid, or you're completely disconnected and not really spending time with them and not really, doing anything to be able to support them, both of those extremes are unhealthy. Our, our radical acceptance is usually the way through.
Yeah.
And radical acceptance is truly letting go of our previous expectations and embracing reality as uncomfortable and, raw as it can be.
Yeah. And it is something that I had to experience with my own one of my sons, because he was different, and not in a negative way. To me, he was just so damn smart at such a young age. I mean, and for him, I couldn't parent him like I do my daughter or my other son. I had to parent him differently. Now, they did try to diagnose him with ADHD. I don't think he really had it. I just think that was the school's excuse for not challenging him enough. But they tried to categorize and say, well, he's ADHD because he won't settle down in the class and do this. I said, well, he's bored. And, they tried to do, like when he was going from first grade to second grade, no, kindergarten to first grade. I told the teacher when he went to first grade, I said, look, I just want to tell you, in kindergarten, he was already doing first grade math and reading and comprehension. So, you can test him if you want, but he's already past that. And she said, oh, no, 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 no. And she said she just treated him like a first grade student. And then halfway through the school year, she calls me up and said, well, we got a problem. I said, no, we don't have a problem. You got a problem. Because I told you this at the very beginning of the school, that and I told her, I said, test him. He enjoyed it so much, even in the summer between kindergarten and first grade, he worked on his math and did his reading all summer long. So it's something that, well, let me ask you this. Does school recognize Asperger's and autism? What symptoms do they see so a father know if the school calls him, he has a good idea of what he's hearing and understanding?
Well, I'll relate it to your example and then go into what they
Okay.
would say as well, because it's all interrelated. Whenever I have a child that doesn't fit the mold of what the school is usually expecting,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's other ways of teaching kids that doesn't involve sitting in a group of 30 other kids and just being able to self-regulate whenever there's downtime or whenever you already know what you're already learning.
Mm-hmm.
It can be boring once you're just reciting something that you've known for months. And there is no solid way in many classrooms of understanding this nuanced difference, especially since they've gone past the recommended ratio or student to teacher ratio in most classrooms,
Mm-hmm.
which last I read was about 1 to 20 should be the maximum for most elementary school classrooms. And even like in the school district that my kid's in, and it's a pretty good school district, they're well beyond that. So 1 to 30 kids in a first grade classroom is a terrible idea. And I think many kids would get misidentified as having ADHD or other, challenges such as Asperger's, because they aren't really getting along with other kids, or it's really hard for them to sit there for a while and just wait for the other kids to catch up. We shouldn't be forcing our kids to then just sit and wait without a healthy, self-regulation mechanism. Which is why I think so many different fidget devices are really popular in school age kids. Like they're just sitting there and they got a lot of energy. They want to be able to engage in material, and there isn't that opportunity in many schools to do what's called, project-based learning. It's an engaging way to be able to get kids to work on project by project, so they have a sense of purpose and motivation for each thing that they're working on. And it's pretty rare to find a teacher that even knows about project-based learning. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really effective and it's really useful for not just kids with ADHD, Asperger's, and autism, but for every kid. I mean, we want to be
Yeah.
able to have a sense that this math problem that we're doing ties into something in the future, rather than just saying math is important. Why? Because we're asking you to do it. I get why kids ask those questions of why am I doing math homework now? Like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't give them an answer that makes sense and we give them an answer that just establishes our authority, they may look like they have ADHD. They may look like they, are,
Yeah.
oppositional defiant disorder. There's another one called disruptive mood dysregulation disorder.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of other things where if we own as parents and educators what our shortcomings are, then I think we're able to truly understand kids.
Yeah, because and that was the problem. I have to really take my hat off, and I'll always have the kindergarten teacher, because she called me. She said, "Mike, I keep having a problem with your son." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "Well, when are you having a problem with him?" She said, "Well, mainly when we're doing math." I said, "Well, what are y'all doing in math?" She said, "Well, we're learning to count to 10." I said, "Well, there's your problem. He's already at 100." so it was like, okay. So she went out and got him the first grade math book. So while the other kindergarten students were doing kindergarten math, she gave him the first grade math book. That was it. And we didn't have any more problem. That's why I try to pre-warn his first grade teacher.
Exactly. You knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
You knew what would work. And I mean, I'm glad that the teacher was able to be flexible enough to say, like, let's get something that works for your son, rather than,
Right.
shaming or saying, well, he just needs to sit and wait.
Right.
So that,
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct. I really think we need to stop trying to put everybody in a box. This is the way we're teaching. I understand that that's a easier. You got to have a format. You got to have a way of doing it, but you still got to be able to consciously look outside the box and say that's not going to work for that child. So we need to do something different, and maybe have a class or a different room where that child can go and get, his or her additional help, or expanding their knowledge that they already have that's above the classroom that they're in. Something, but we just need to look at that. And I know that's not easy, but I like to see it happen for more kids.
I would love to see that happen for more kids, because kids really do well if they can. And that other theory that I use called collaborative problem solving is based on that premise. Is if you give kids the tools to then use the intelligence that they have,
Right.
so the executive functioning skills to apply that just natural innate talent, kids thrive.
Yeah.
And whenever we try to control them too much, especially when it doesn't make sense, they're going to fight back. They're not going to tolerate, just being told what to do. And it feels like it's disrespect, but in reality, they're trying to respect themselves more. And we're just the consequence of an adult getting disrespected.
So what can a father do? What steps can he take to be engaged and understand what their child may be going through?
The hardest lesson that I learned as an adult is that I never know enough. And as a parent or as a father, I always made the assumption that I know a lot more than my kids, so I know how to do this. But I made the huge mistake of often saying, I don't know what they're thinking in this moment. I don't know what their opinion is. I don't know what they're really coming at me with. And whenever I stopped and just heard my kid out and then just said, like, one step beyond where they're at, they then heard me. But whenever I just said, like, we need to do it my way, or like, I think I know how to solve this problem, and my kid, didn't resonate with that. That one book I turned to, this is, 15 years ago, is, how to listen so your kids will talk, and how to talk so your kids will listen. I think that was like a pivotal book. I mean, I don't know how many millions of copies it sold now, but that really helped me say, like, the best thing that any of us can do, whether it's, on the job, or whether it's as a parent, or whether it's, to anyone, even at the grocery store line, if we're a really good listener, we usually figure out how to connect with someone else. And whenever we're just telling someone else what to do, we're making the biggest mistake of assuming that we have enough knowledge to make a reasonable choice when someone else clearly doesn't believe that that's true.
Yeah.
So
That's
humbleness
good.
and listening. Every dad can do that.
Listening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard I know for me it was. And I like doing these shows because when I was raising my kids, I didn't know this. And I could have been a much better father had I known some of the information that you're providing and some of the other people that we've had on the show. But that's why we do it, because I really want fathers to be the best version of themselves. And we have to start learning how to parent with an open mind and not go back to what my mom and daddy did, and because every kid is different, so we've got to be able to learn to connect with them in different ways. And there's still some things that you still should have, like a date night with your daughter, or a single night with your son, going out just with your son, and those things that you still should do. But when you have an Asperger's or autistic child, you have to kind of do it a little differently, I would think.
Absolutely. Um, it still matters to be able to have that one-on-one time, and it definitely matters for them to feel that you're celebrating who they are as a person,
Hmm.
even if it's something that you know nothing about. So whether it's sitting down, or your kid playing iPad and saying, "Get off those screens," say, "What are you doing there in that game on Roblox? What are you doing there on Fortnite? Like, what are you proud of what you accomplished?"
Hmm.
And whenever it's something that you then get to dive in to their world, sometimes kids are really proud of the oddest things, but it's
Hmm.
something that they're really proud of and something that they're really good at. And we don't know what the future holds. It may be something that's really, viable as a career in the future.
Hmm.
So as I really just sit down and have that humbleness, it's like, I don't know nearly as much um, as 2 years from now, me, or just as my kid would know about them. I know more than I did 2 years ago. I know I'm always evolving. And I know that, as I, particularly as a parent, I have two sons, and as I particularly evolve as a therapist, that if I have the ability to say, I was probably wrong about that, so how
Hmm.
do I do something different now?
Hmm.
I'm 1% better each day.
Hmm.
So I know that it's not just referring back to, well, my parents did it this way, so I'm going to do it this way. No, my parents were like eons behind on what they needed to do, but they did a good enough job in that
Yeah.
moment. And I believe as a father, I'm doing a good enough job. So every
Yeah.
dad, every father needs to know, even if you made mistakes in the past, even if you have like just cringeworthy moments that you screwed up and it was awful and you don't even want to go back to even thinking about that situation in the past, know that if you make an effort to be a good enough dad today, that's all your kid's really looking for. And they may not forgive you for the past, but they'll definitely appreciate what you're doing in the present.
Yeah. And kids have a tendency to be able to see that in you. If they see you improving and trying to do better, they recognize that in you, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. Because they see that look in your eyes. They see just non-verbally what you're trying to express. I mean, kids with Asperger sometimes struggle with that,
Hmm.
but most neurotypical kids can see that the effort is there, even if the result isn't what they're looking for.
Okay. Now
But
you
the way
have a
that I would
book.
adapt it for, you're good. Yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I can segue into the book too, but yeah, I have a book called Parenting and Asperger's that is a bunch of these different things to adapt
Hmm.
parenting to a neurodiverse child. And it's just
Hmm.
a bunch of practical strategies. I tried to go light on the theory and just give you a long list of things you can try. And if you're able to try these things, if you're able to, um, you know, understand what self-regulation is like, understand what sensory issues are, and just be able to say, like, if I'm in this situation, I'm driving in the car, what do I do if my kid's having a meltdown? I really need to get somewhere on time. And for me, the biggest thing to do just in any of those moments is have a practical strategy. If you don't have one now, figure it out so then you can use it in the future. So it's okay to be late to something because your kid's more important. It's okay to be able to slow down your reaction so then you're able to really connect with whatever the dilemma would be, because you can't solve the problem in the moment sometimes. It's an emergency. But if you learn, you then don't have that emergency again in the future. So allow yourself to be late, allow yourself to be able to slow down. And the more that we're able to slow down, we understand our kids. And the more that we actually learn from that, interaction in any way, we're a slightly better parent tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. So let me ask you. You say you have two boys.
I too. Yeah.
What are some of the things that you hope they learn from you?
The biggest thing that I hope my oldest learns from me, because they're both, really bright kids, at least, my judgment of them, they're the smartest kids ever. I hope that I hope that my oldest always learns to be brave and to be able to take that risk sometimes, because we have to trust who we are going to be, not just who we are in this moment. So if we think that we have the skills to then figure something out, take that leap and then go into something that's the complete unknown, and know that the skills that you have are going to lead you to be successful in something, even if you don't have the tools before you take that leap.
Mm.
And for my youngest, it's the opposite advice. Stop taking all those
Really?
leaves, man. Sometimes just chill and just understand that, we don't have to just keep pushing that boundary.
Really?
So parenting really needs to be tailored to each kid
Yeah.
and really understand what their view is of, every dynamic, and just really hearing your kids out, because they're a mixed bag. They all have their different strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you on that because that was one of the things we were talking about is you definitely have to open with a different mind because even though they came from the same parent, they're two different kids or three different kids or four different kids, whatever. And even if they're twins, I've heard about twins
Right?
being total opposites of each other. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So it's good to hear that, and I really want to ask you one more question before we get out of here because I know you have to go. Is there one thing that you can tell a father that is dealing with a Asperger child or autism child?
The hardest thing that I've told fathers is it it doesn't have to get better for your life to improve. Or oftentimes they base like their level of being able to go on a vacation or their ability to then, have a day with peace. It
Hmm.
doesn't come from your child's autism getting less intense or less worse. It comes from your perspective shifting. So it becomes an effort to then just accept that they have emotional dysregulation, they have inflexibility, they have difficulty understanding where you're coming from. So whenever you meet reality exactly where it's at,
Hmm.
that's usually how life gets better, because you're not making an unrealistic expectation of yourself or your child in that moment. And the more that we can see things, authentically and see the real situation for, the good and the bad that's included, things get better.
Okay. Now, Michael, how can the audience get in touch with you if they so desire? And I don't know if you have yet, but I would love for you to add your information onto our website so that they can find you. But tell the audience how they can get in touch with you now.
Sure. If it comes to the book and finding it, it is on Amazon. It is in Barnes and Noble. I think it's in some Target stores. Um, so that's michaelyuram.com to be able to find the book if you just want to just have the list of different retailers that has it. And as far as, just coming clinically, we can treat individuals in California, and we have Uram Family Therapy, open for business. We have telehealth, and then we have 3 locations in Southern California. So
Okay.
uramfamilytherapy.com and michaelyuram.com.
Okay. Well, great. Well, Michael, I really do appreciate you coming on the show, and you definitely have provided some great information. And hope our audience really learned something today, and if they're listening, they should have.
Well, thank you, Mike. And I really appreciate your show and what you're doing. This is, you just have a lot of purpose in being able to make the world a slightly better place. And I really respect that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is unfortunately our time for today. I really want to thank Michael Uram for coming on the show and talking about the Asperger's, the autism, and even a little bit about ADHD because I know it's an issue. But listen to the show, call him, and get in touch with him if you need to talk with him and find out a little bit more. If your child has Asperger's or autism or even ADHD or some other issue that you want to talk with them about, call him and get in touch with him. Email him. His information will be here. It will be in the descriptions below. And hopefully we can get them on our website as well, and that way you can be able to find them. But you got them at Uram Family Therapy. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, if you have not subscribed to the show, please go to the Father Show with Mike Thompson YouTube channel and hit that subscription button. And while you're there, hit that notification bell so that way every week when we have a show, you'll be notified and you'll know. Also, men, if you are looking for resources, go to the Father Show with MikeThompson.com. Click on resources, and there you will find resources that can help you, and you can find people like Michael and be able to get the help and the knowledge that you need because really it is about improving what you already know. So be the best version of yourself and go ahead and get that information. And I want to thank you for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. God bless you all.